Section 9 of The Age of the Condottieri by Oscar Browning. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Pamela Nagami. Chapter 4. Francesco Sforza, Frederick III, Pius II, Part 3. The affairs of Genoa now become of importance for Italian history. Genoa, which had for a long time been subject to Milan, recovered its liberty in 1438. There was an old naval rivalry between the Genoese and the Catalans, which made the Genoese the persistent enemies of Alfonso of Aragon. The two principal families in Genoa were the Adorni and the Campo Fregosi, of great power, but of plebeian origin. The old nobility found themselves excluded from offices and power. In 1441, John Antonio del Fiesco placed himself at the head of the ancient families of the Doria and Spinola, allied himself with the Duke of Milan and the King of Naples, and attacked the power of Tommaso Campo Fregoso, who was then Doge. At the close of 1442, the Doge was suddenly deposed, and the government committed to a balia of 8 men, of whom Raffaele Adorno was one. Almost immediately afterwards he was elected Doge, but with limited power. Peace was now concluded with Alfonso of Naples, and quiet continued for a short time. In 1447 Raffaele Adorno was forced to give way to his cousin Bernabo. He was in his turn driven out, and was succeeded by more than one of the family of Campo Fregoso. In fact, out of the 31 Doges who reigned between 1339 and 1527, 7 are Adorni and 14 Campo Fregosi. From 1446 no other names but these are seen upon the roll. In 1453 Piero Fregoso was unable as Doge to defend the colony of Pera and the other Genoese settlements on the Black Sea, as well as the island of Corsica, had to be surrendered to the Bank of St. George, a trading company invested with powers of government similar to the old East India Company of England. Alfonso was embittered against Genoa from the favour which it had always shown to France, and especially toward René of Anjou, and he gave his support to the family of the Adorni. Piero Campo Fregoso saw no other hope of safety than to seek help from France. In 1458 Charles VII, King of France, was solemnly declared Lord of Genoa, and he sent as his representative John of Calabria, son of René of Anjou, the titular King of Naples. Alfonso continued the war with great vigour against this new enemy, but died on June 27, 1458. After his death the throne of Naples was again disputed. Aragon and Sicily went to his brother Ferdinando. Naples he left to his natural son Ferdinand, who was generally known as Don Ferrante. Alfonso had endeavoured to secure the peaceable succession of Ferrante by marrying a son and daughter of Ferrante to a son and daughter of Francesco Sforza. Calixtus III, notwithstanding the benefits he had received from King Alfonso, refused to recognize his natural son as his heir. He rather supported the claims of John of Calabria of the house of Anjou, and it is probable that his real object was to secure the throne of Naples for one of his nephews. If the Pope had conceived any idea of the infamy with which the advancement of his sister's sons would stain the name of Borgia, he would have suffered them to remain in the obscurity of Valencia. The race of the Borgias in medieval Rome has been compared with that of the Claudii in the ancient city. They were by nature strong of body, full of passion, ambitious, unprincipled, appropriately represented by the bull which they bore on their arms. 2 of them, young immature men, he made cardinals, adopted them and gave them his own name. A third, Don Pedro Luis, his uncle's favourite, was designated for a throne, either that of Naples, Cyprus, or Byzantium. The Vatican was overrun by Spaniards. The Spanish language took the place of the Italian. The faction of the Borgias — the Spanish orthography is Borja — went by the name of the Catalans. Don Pedro Luis Borja was the most powerful and the most brilliant man in Rome. When he saw the Pope's death approaching, he fled from the vengeance of the Romans and retired to Civita Vecchia, where he died of fever. His uncle, Calixtus III, expired on the day succeeding his flight, August 6, 1458. The successor of Calixtus III in the Papacy was a remarkable man, early known to the world, Aeneas Silvius Piccolomini, sprung from a noble family of the city of Siena, who now took the name of Pius II. In the conclave, Cardinal Bessarion had said that he would not vote for Piccolomini because he had a disease in his feet, and that the Church, threatened by the Turks, had need of a very active head. The event shows how much he was mistaken. The new Pope had first made himself known as a poet and a man of letters. In 1430 he became secretary to Cardinal Capranica, and accompanied him to the Council of Basel. He travelled all over Europe, and was one of the first cultivated Europeans to become acquainted with the condition of Germany. His life is full of romance. Once in a storm off the coast of Scotland he made a vow that if he were saved he would walk barefoot to the nearest chapel of pilgrimage, and he suffered all his life from gout in consequence of the performance of his vow. He was created Poet Laureate of Frankfurt by the Emperor Frederick III. He was afterwards secretary to Frederick's chancellor, Kaspar Schlick. In 1445 he left the Emperor for the Pope, took orders, and was made a bishop by Nicholas V. He did not finally leave Germany till 1455, when he was sent to convey the homage of the Emperor to Pope Calixtus. He was made a cardinal in the following year. He had lived a life as varied and as full of interest as a Condottieri. He had attained high rank, but had not been able to amass a fortune. At the conclave it was difficult to obtain a majority. Estude de Ville, Archbishop of Rouen, was the favourite candidate, but there were objections to having a French pope. At last Rodrigo Borgia arose and said, "I vote for the Cardinal of Siena." The rest followed his example, and Piccolomini heard of his election with tears. His very election was a sign of revolution. For the first time a travelled, cultivated, astute man of the world was seen upon the papal throne. He took the name of Pius as a natural accompaniment to that of Aeneas. He would say of himself, "Sum pius Aeneas, fama super aetera notus." The Emperor was delighted with the choice. Pius II was 53 years of age when he assumed the tiara, small and weak, bald-headed, looking pale and aged, a martyr to the gout. Men who expected to find in him a literary pope, a second Nicholas V, were disappointed. The one object of his efforts was the recovery of Constantinople from the Turks. He summoned the princes of Christendom to meet at Mantua for the discussion of this common object. He said that God had made him pope to liberate the Church from this affliction. He was sensible enough to recognize Ferrante as king of Naples. We must return to the affairs of Genoa, which we left in the hands of the French. In the spring of 1461 Paolo Campofregoso, Archbishop of Genoa, and Prospero Adorno, forgetting their quarrel for the moment, entered the city and drove the French back into the castle. After some vicissitudes, Adorno was elected Doge, and the Genoese asked Sforza to assist them in driving out the French. The battle took place on July 17, 1461, the day of Sant'Alessio. The French were entirely defeated, and it was ordered that the victory should be commemorated by an annual festival. After the battle, the animosities between the two rival families again broke out, and Ludovico Campofregoso was made Doge. In 1461 Charles VII of France died, and was succeeded by Louis XI. He had always been a friend of Sforza, and he now made him a present of Savona, together with his rights over Milan. At the beginning of 1463, Paolo Campofregoso, the archbishop, became Doge of Genoa, and was recognized by Pius II. His rule was so tyrannical as to be unbearable, and his first thought was to take vengeance on those who had at any time opposed him. Sforza sent Gaspare Vimercate to press his claims to the city, and in April 1464 Sforza was recognized as Lord of Genoa. The Congress of Mantua led to but little result. The Pope delivered a great oration on September 26, 1459. He showed that if the Turks conquered Hungary, there would be no obstacle to their progress. Passing through Carniola and Trieste, they might descend upon Italy with the same ease with which they might disembark at Brindisi. He proclaimed a crusade on January 14, 1460, and so closed the Congress. Notwithstanding the zeal of the pontiff, the plan for a crusade appeared to languish. There was a great want of money. This was unexpectedly supplied by the discovery of some alum mines at Tolfa, in the neighbourhood of Civitavecchia, by Giovanni de Castro, a friend of the Piccolomini family. He wrote to the Pope, "I announce to you victory over the Turks." These mines continued to be profitably worked till 1814, when artificially made alum took the place of the natural mineral. In 1463 the Pope told the astonished world that he would lead the crusade himself. In the bull of October 22, 1463, he says, "We will not fight with the sword, because our feeble hand can scarcely raise itself to bless the people. We will fight not with the sword, but with prayer. We will stand on high on the poop of the ship, or on a high hill near the battle, to bless our friends and to curse our enemies." The Pope, although he knew that he was dying, determined to travel to Ancona, where the crusading fleet was to rendezvous. He left Rome on June 18, 1464. The prelates and the people took leave of him at the Ponte Molle, and he continued his journey with a few companions. He reached Ancona on July 11th. He found in the town some 30,000 French and Spanish adventurers, who, when they discovered that the Pope had no intention of paying their expenses, retired to their homes. There were only 2 papal galleys in the harbour. On August 12th the Doge Cristoforo Moro arrived with 12 galleys. From the window of his palace the Pope gazed at the Venetian fleet as it entered the port, and fixed the day of Assumption, August 15th, for receiving the Doge. But on that day he died. When the cardinals had finished the sacred rites, he called them round his bed and said, "My hour is come, God calls me." He spoke of the crusade which he had twice attempted, and asked pardon for his many shortcomings. His last words were addressed to the Cardinal of Pavia, whom he begged to pray for his soul. The 40,000 ducats found in the Pope's chest were given to Matthias, King of Hungary. Everyone felt that after the Pope's death the crusade was at an end. On August 16th the Doge left Ancona and returned to Venice on August 23rd. Francesco Sforza was now nearing his end. We have already alluded to the marriage of his daughter Ippolita Maria with Alfonso of Calabria, son of Ferrante, King of Naples. Frederick, the brother of Alfonso, came to Milan in the summer of 1465 to receive the bride, but when the marriage train had reached Siena, it was stopped by order of the Duke. This was caused by the death of Giacomo Piccinino, who had been treacherously thrown into prison by Ferrante. The circumstances which attended this would be incredible if they were not supported by irrefragable evidence. Piccinino had come to Milan from his capital, Sulmona, in the summer of 1464 at the request of Sforza. The Duke received him with every demonstration of affection, and gave him the hand of his daughter Drusiana. Piccinino then left for Sulmona, intending to go to Naples if he could do so with safety. he sent one of his friends, Broccardo Persico, to sound the intentions of Ferrante, and his reports were most reassuring. Piccinino therefore went to Naples, but there is no doubt that his death, which was warmly desired by Ferrante, because he was an adherent of the Angevin party, had already been conceded by Sforza as a price of alliance with Naples. As a mark of friendship, Sforza had given to Piccinino Pietro Pusterla, one of his own orators or official speakers, and there is no doubt that this man was thoroughly informed of Sforza's most secret intentions, and had no other design than that of conducting Piccinino to death. Suddenly the mask was removed. On St. John's Day, June 24th, when both Naples and Milan were gay with festivity, Piccinino came to the Castello Nuovo to take leave of Ferrante, as he desired to return to Sulmona to meet his wife Drusiana. He was received with affection, but was suddenly seized and imprisoned, together with his son Francesco and others. Ferrante justified his conduct in a circular letter full of empty phrases addressed to the potentates of Italy. Drusiana, who had not reached Sulmona, returned to her uncle Alessandro in Pesaro. The Bracceschi soldiery of Piccinino, insulted and oppressed, took refuge with Domenico Malatesta, and the territories of Piccinino yielded themselves spontaneously to Ferrante. The Pope and the King of France accused Sforza of having consented to the imprisonment of Piccinino. Sforza wrote a long letter of sorrow and expostulation to Naples, and to gain more credit for his innocence, he stopped the marriage train of Ippolita at Siena and sent his son Tristan to demand the liberation of the prisoner. On July 7th a battle took place between the Aragonese and the Angevin fleets in the Bay of Naples. Ferrante was victorious. It was said that Piccinino, anxious to see what was going on, had climbed upon a table in his cell and had fallen down and broken his leg. Certainly he died a few days afterwards, in all probability strangled by order of Ferrante. Tristan wrote from Naples to urge that Piccinino, being dead, could not be brought to life again, and that Ippolita's marriage had better be concluded. The Pope, the Florentines, and Ferrante joined in the entreaty, and Ippolita entered Naples on September 14th, 1465. The letters found by Bucer in the National Library at Paris and published by him in 1879 leave no doubt that Sforza was privy to this disgraceful act of treachery. Sforza's last enterprise was to assist his friend Louis XI in the war against his vassals, which ended with the Peace of Conflans. For this purpose he sent his eldest son Galeazzo Maria to command his troops, and the young prince was permitted to don the fleur-de-lis of France as an addition to his arms. Francesco died after 2 days' illness on March 8th, 1466, at the age of 65. End of section 9.